This is the Project Management Podcast. We bring project management to beginners and experts. Find us on the web at pm-podcast.com or send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com. Hello and welcome to episode 163. I am Cornelius Fichtner. This is the Project Management Podcast. Nice to have you with us. In our last PM Podcast listeners survey, you, the listeners, told me that you would also like to hear book reviews on the podcast. So, we teamed up with the PMI Los Angeles chapter book club, and in episode 151, we brought you the first 2 book reviews. Today, we continue with 2 more books. First, we have Lean Project Management, written by Laurence Leach and reviewed by Mark Layton. Second, we have Silos, Politics and Turf Wars, written by Patric Lencioni and reviewed by Sani Abdul-Jabbar. And once you have listened to these reviews, we need your feedback. Do you want more reviews like this, or do you want us to stop? We have a survey with 2 questions for you that should take about 90 seconds to answer. Please stop by at pm-podcast.com and click on the survey link that you see in episode 163. The survey will be open until December 31st, 2010. If you want us to continue with these episodes, then please answer yes, I want more book reviews. And if you want us to stop, then please select no, I don't want any more book reviews. The majority wins, so please vote. This episode of the Project Management Podcast is sponsored by Wrike. How do you keep your team up to date on all projects? Wrike's social project management software helps thousands of managers worldwide organize their project data in one spot and ensures seamless collaboration of their employees. With Wrike, collaborating on multiple projects is as easy as navigating a social network. Keep your team members on the same page. Collaborate twice as efficiently as you did before. Start a free trial today at www.wrike.com. Let's move on with the book reviews by Mark Layton and Sani Abdul-Jabbar. Mark Layton, recognized internationally as Mr. Agile, is an organizational strategist and PMI certification instructor with over 20 years in the project and program management field. Prior to founding Platinum Edge in 2001, Mark developed his expertise as a consulting firm executive, program management coach, and in the trenches project leader. He also spent 11 years as a cryptographic specialist for the US Air Force, where he earned both commendation and achievement medals for his accomplishments. Sani Abdul-Jabbar is a certified project manager, entrepreneur, and founder of Vestech USA. As a consultant in business process and information technology outsourcing, Sani has advised executive leadership in a wide range of industries encompassing information technology, consumer electronics, automotive, hospitality, media, and entertainment. Sani holds 2 MBAs and several postgraduate certifications from internationally acclaimed US and foreign institutions. And now, take out a blanket, cuddle up, and let's read a good book. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Joel Fleitz, Mark Layton, and Sani Abdul-Jabbar from the PMI LA Book Club.
Hello, Joel, and thanks again for bringing members of the PMI Los Angeles Book Club here on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Hello, Cornelius. We really appreciate the opportunity of being part of your podcast.
All right, so tell me, what's been happening with the PMI LA Book Club since we last talked? Do you have more members? Do you have fewer members? Have you remained the same?
We are in a growing stage. We've probably had about a 50% growth in our meetings lately. We keep on reading about a book every 6 to 7 weeks, and we seem to be continuously growing.
All right. So what other books than the ones that we're going to be hearing from today did you read and discuss in the meantime?
Well, we read The Lazy Project Manager.
By Peter Taylor, yeah, had him on the program a few episodes ago.
We read The Alpha Project Managers, what the top 2% know, what everybody else doesn't know.
Okay.
And I think we discussed the others so far. Right now, we're in the middle of reading Getting Naked, a business fable about shedding the 3 fears that sabotage clients' loyalty.
All right.
That's also by Patric Lencioni.
He seems to be your favorite author.
We're running out of his books, so we're going to have to write more, or we're going to have to go to somebody else. We've read about 11 books so far.
Why do you think people join the PMI LA Book Club?
Well, 1 is probably their love of books. 2 is to gain some project management knowledge. 3 is to network with their fellow project managers and business analysts. And 4, you also get PDUs, which help you maintain your credentials.
Right. So would you recommend that other PMI chapters around the world also start doing this for their members?
Certainly. Or if they want to, they could probably join us remotely. Mark is our technical whiz, and he could probably set them up via Skype if they wanted to join our LA book club.
Excellent. So where can folks around the world learn more about your book club and possibly even join in?
The LA chapter's website has a link to our book club, so they can get on that way.
All right. And of course, we'll put the contact information for the book club into the show notes as well, so that people can just go to the podcast website and grab it from there. So tell me, which 2 books are we going to discuss today?
Tonight we're going to discuss Lean Project Management, the 8 Principles for Success. And Mark Layton is going to talk about that with you. And we're going to talk about silos, politics, and turf wars. And Abdul Sani is going to talk to you about that.
All right. Excellent. In that case, well, let's switch over to Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Cornelius. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you. And thank you for being here at this time of the evening and joining us for this book discussion. Appreciate it. So Lean Project Management, right? Written by Laurence Leach. Tell us a bit about the book. When was it first published? How thick is it? How much is it going to cost somebody who wants to buy it?
So the book was originally published in July of 2006. It's about 230, 240 pages, and they can find it on any of the bookstores for about $20. Okay.
And the author, Laurence Leach, I happened to hear him speak a few weeks ago. What's he famous for?
Well, Laurence Leach's paradigm is really around critical chain, which is all based on the theory of constraints model. He's written several books that are around that. He actually wrote a book called Critical Chain Project Management that was a predecessor to this book. And subsequent to this book, he wrote another one, which was called Lean Project Management Leadership.
Okay. So is Lean then in the general area of where his books always are, or is this a breakout into something new?
This is really an extension of his earlier work around critical chain. So he does a broad-based review of a lot of different paradigms, but they're really around that same core concept. So he covers Deming's principles, critical chain. He actually does go into the theory of constraints to a certain degree, but the way that he pulls it all together is really founded in that paradigm of critical chain and theory of constraints.
Mm-hmm. And who is the intended audience?
The core intended audience is really project managers. So it's really about, as a project manager and from the perspective of the project manager, how it is that project managers can approach projects and be more efficient in approaching projects.
Mm-hmm. Now, while I enjoyed the presentation that I saw by Mr. Leach a while back, I have to admit I haven't read any of his books. So what's his style? Is it formal, informal? Is it textbook? Is it a story? Or what is it?
He's got a very formal writing style. The book is actually almost borderline textbook in its writing style. So the first several chapters of the book are somewhat of a challenge to get through because he's laying a foundation, and it's a very technical foundation that he lays. Later on, when he actually gets into the lean project management principles, he's got 8 principles that are the foundation of the book. I think it moves a little quicker, but he definitely has a very formal writing style.
Mm-hmm. So what then is the overall thesis of the book? What's he trying to get across?
Well, essentially what he's doing is he's going back and he's looking at Deming's principles and critical chain theory, and essentially saying that project managers can employ these techniques to conduct their projects more efficiently, right? They can use them to reduce waste and at the same time be able to increase the quality of the output.
Okay. Did you find anything surprising in the book that you hadn't expected?
Personally, I was already familiar with theory of constraints and critical chain, so I already had that overview. So there wasn't any surprise from that perspective. I was a little surprised that even in 2006, he didn't incorporate some of the more contemporary lean concepts that are being used on projects. But being as based in critical chain as he was, he tended to stay with that core base. So.
And when you talk about lean, what type of concepts were you hoping to find as well, but didn't find?
Well, a lot of the lean sort of concepts around agile, iterative type of development, being able to incorporate the customer, moving away from this concept of the project manager as sort of almost an overlord type of entity, one that is directing the team. I was hoping to see something that moved more towards that team-based facilitation as opposed to more of the manager type of director. And this book really, taking a very systems approach, still stayed with that project manager as the hub of the team, and one that really dictates the actions of others.
Mm-hmm. You kind of painted a somewhat grim picture, at least of the first few chapters here. It sounds like, you have to almost, think of it as the PMBOK guide, dry, textbook-like, and it's a challenge to get through. So why then should our listeners here go pick up this book and read it?
Well, there were some things that were very positive about the book, and I certainly don't want to paint it necessarily in an unnecessarily negative light.
Okay.
I think that universally the book club did say that reading the book was more of a challenge than some of the more story-type books that we've read that can really engage you, and they can make their point, but they make it in more of a humanistic type of way. This is certainly a systems approach to critical chain project management. But there are a lot of things that were positive about the book. So, for example, if somebody was looking for a higher level view of theory of constraints, critical chain, they wanted to understand Deming's principles that were sort of behind those things, get an overview of all of those different frameworks in a single book without having to go too deep in them, this would be a great book for that because it covers a lot of methodologies. And it puts them together in a way that they intertwine with each other and they make sense, which is a benefit of not going out and having to reach each of these books individually and try to put them together yourself. So from an aggregation perspective, I think you did a great job. It just definitely is a systems perspective in looking at project management.
Okay, well, that sounds interesting because now that you've phrased it in this way, I almost want to go out and pick it up myself because I've been interested in all of these topics as well. So I think getting through these first few chapters and going through them doesn't seem to be such a problem. How did the book affect you? Did you like it?
Well, again, I thought it was great the way that he had aggregated these concepts together. Now, keep in mind, I have my own perspective on it, right? I run an agile-centric consulting firm, and we help companies that make this transition. So we tend to be more on the leading edge of contemporary approaches, fully based in agile and lean software development from more of a Poppendieck type of perspective. So Mary and Tom Poppendieck do a lot of lean software development books that I think are fantastic. So looking at those from the view of late in 2010 when we're having this conversation as opposed to when he was writing this in 2006, so much progress has been made that it's almost difficult to read the book because it was written in 2006 and a lot of the things that are brought to bear are different than how we're approaching projects now. One of the things that I mentioned earlier, which was he takes a very project manager, almost as an overlord, central hub type of resource perspective. I would be concerned for teams that continued with that kind of approach. I think that there is an opportunity to be even much more efficient, much higher in quality by acting as a facilitator focused on reducing impediments for a team as opposed to really driving a team to perform.
Mm-hmm. Is the reason why this isn't in his book something that is specific to Leach? Or is this just because, 4 years have passed since then and, Lean has moved on into different directions?
Right. I think to a certain degree it's a combination. I think that Leach is fully vested in critical chain, and whether it's 2006 or 2011, I think that the books that Leach will probably write will be founded in critical chain and the theory of constraints. At the same time, I think that some of his newer books, which we haven't read yet, but I'm sure that we will, some of his newer books are going to incorporate some of these more contemporary approaches to be able to balance critical chain theory along with the things that we've learned since 2006.
Okay. Now, seeing that you've obviously read many books on lean project management, were there any ideas that you found in the book that you have to say, oh, you know what, this is new, this is something that changes my outlook or reinforces your understanding of lean project management?
Probably more from a reinforcement perspective. I know that, as he worked through his principles, he talked a lot about project execution. He talked about the issues around multitasking, what's called student syndrome, which is essentially, delaying until the last minute. Parkinson's law, those types of challenges that every project faces. I thought he did a good job in sort of explaining how those concepts really do have a wasteful impact on projects, and they can allow a project to run away very, very quickly. From that perspective, he did a great job.
Okay. And now, of course, the most important question of them all, after all of this, would you recommend the book to other project managers to read still?
I think that I would. Yeah, I mean, it never hurts for project managers to be well informed. It's great to have this foundation to sort of say, this is sort of the progression that we have taken as a discipline. I think that from a overview of all of these different methodologies, to have them aggregated and synthesized the way that he had it, I thought was very valuable. I may not have agreed with all of his principles, but as far as being able to cover the topics and say, hey, this is a point of view, it's a point of view that has shown progression from where we were, I thought it was very, very valuable.
Excellent. Mark, thank you very much again. The book's called Lean Project Management, written by Laurence Leach. And of course, we are going to have a link to this book on the PM podcast website and also of the next book so that people who just want to go click and buy can do so through our website. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cornelius. Appreciate it.
All right. And if I understand it correctly, you are now off to a fundraiser. Is that right?
I am. I'm off to a charity event tonight. So I appreciate your time.
So enjoy the charity event. Have a good evening.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
You too.
So in that case, let us move on to Sani Abdul-Jabbar. You here, Sani?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Now, in your case, we are going to discuss Silos, Politics, and Turf Wars, written by the gentleman who seems to be the favorite author of the PMI Los Angeles Book Club, right?
Certainly, that's how it seems. Patric Lencioni, we have read at least 3 of his books so far.
Right. And tell us a little bit about this book. How does this fit into the, shall we call it, series of books that he's written? When did it come out? How thick is it? What's the price of it?
So the Patric usually writes about client services, team buildings, and organizational effectiveness type issues. This is his first book on the subject of silos, organizational compartmentalization, etc. The book was published on March 3rd, 2006. It has about 224 pages in it, and It's a very good, straightforward read on a very common problem in the organizations and in the project teams as well.
Okay. Now, I just have to throw this question in here because Mark said that, the book was written in 2006, and since then, Lean of his book has moved so much forward. Do you feel that something similar has happened here in this particular space? Or would you say, no, what I have read here in Silos, Politics and Turf Wars is still applicable today?
Yes. Short answer is yes. Project management is an evolving field. So what Mark was talking about, in that case, it's true. The problem of silos in the organizations, we've been talking about it since the time of pharaohs, I guess. It's an old issue. We didn't really have a solution for it until recently. So thanks to Patric, now we have a solution. And I think it's as true today as it was in 2006 when the book was published for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think he broke out of his usual topic and started to write about this? Is it just something that's close to his heart, or?
It's not that he really broke out from his usual topics. He writes about team buildings. He writes about organizational effectiveness, and he writes about client services. So this idea of eliminating silos fits right in the concept of team building and organizational effectiveness. So I think he's still very much within his scope of work that he's done before in the past.
And is this book intended for project managers, or is it, generally anyone who's working in a company where they have silos, politics, and turf wars?
Well, silos, politics, and turf wars are common problem in wherever you have more than few people.
That's true. Yeah, as soon as you have more than one.
I was going to say more than one, but then it would be difficult to have. Anyways. So wherever you have, more than few people, the risk of grouping and risk of compartmentalization comes into play. So this book, I think, is targeted at anyone who is who is dealing with the issue of silos and seeking a solution, be it a project team, be it an organization, or any group of people of any size.
The books that I've read of Patric Lencioni, they were all sort of a story that he was telling. Is this the same?
So Patric Lencioni, I was actually, when I read his books, they're very story-like books. And then I learned about him that he's actually a screenwriter, a trained screenwriter.
Oh, that explains it.
So that shows up in his work. Almost all his books are very story-like. It's almost like watching a movie.
Let's jump into the book here. Let's open it up. Why don't you give us, sort of an overview, maybe a synopsis, and maybe also, what is the like I asked Mark as well earlier on, what's the thesis of the book here?
So the thesis of the book is this. Silos can be eliminated through the power of crisis. That's all. Silos can be eliminated through the power of crisis. He talks about identifying silos. He talks about, he prescribes a model to combat silos, which are the barriers that exist between departments within the organization or within a team. And his model is based on 4 principles: thematic goal, defining objectives, standard operating objectives, and metrics. And I can go on each of these real quick.
Please do, yes.
Yeah, so thematic goal is a single most important short-term goal around which you can rally your team. You can get your departments to rally around this one single most important short-term goal. Defining objectives is the qualitative way of defining the success of defining your success, or if you achieved your goal or not. It's qualitative. Standard operating objectives simply means show must go on. That's all what it means. If whatever you are doing, whatever your business is, if you produce podcast, even if you're working on your single most important goal of, for example, improving your any process, finding new speakers for your podcast, you still need to produce those podcasts. In my case, if my goal is to my operating objective is to produce softwares, websites, and smartphone applications for my clients, even if I'm working on my short-term objectives of improvement in the organization, I still have to do what I'm supposed to do. So show must go on. That's what it means. And metrics is a quantitative way of ensuring that you are on the right track, that you are achieving your goals, your thematic goals, and your operating objectives. These are KPIs. These are executive dashboards, any quantitatives, any numbers.
Okay. Let me go back to the overall thesis that he has in regards to this. He says that silos can be removed through the power of crisis. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, right? So he's saying that in an organization, there will be silos. Mm-hmm. And these silos will probably be defended under normal business conditions. But as soon as a crisis arises in an organization, then the silos will be broken down and people will start to work together more closely across the silo borders. Is that generally it?
Very well put. That's exactly.
And I haven't read the book.
Oh, yeah.
Because it just seemed so powerful. It seemed such a powerful statement. Silos can be removed through the power of crisis. It's so obvious if you think of it.
Let me make this statement. It's very interesting that you totally understood, and you said you haven't even read the book. And that's the beauty of this book. It's common sense. It's common sense put in a very, very straightforward way. And that's why I love this book.
Okay, so why should our listeners read this book here as well?
As we discussed earlier, problem of silos is very common in the organizations. Mm-hmm. It's nothing new. It's been there for a very long time, and it reduces teams' output. It negatively affects any organization. It turns colleagues into competitors. So anyone who is looking to deal with that problem head on should read this book. It's a how-to guide. It's a solution guide to deal with the issue of organizational compartmentalization.
Okay. What's the most unexpected thing that you found in the book?
The use of the word crisis in a positive notion, with a positive notion. That was most unexpected. I am a big believer of objectives, and I'm a big believer of KPIs and quantitatives and target dates. Having an objective, having a target date, and measuring it. I have a faith in all those three things. But what Patric did, he consolidated those three ideas into one word and called it crisis. And then he talked about using the power of crisis to achieve something good. Usually when you hear the word crisis, your mind goes into crisis mode with a negative connotation. So that was something very unexpected that I read in this book.
All right, let's move on. Let's see how you liked the book, and let's discuss this a little bit here. Well, overall, it sounds to me like you liked it very much, right?
I liked it very much. I liked it very much because I was able to relate with it. I was able to learn something from it. And I was able to actually not only learn something from it, I was able to implement the model learned from this book into my business right away. And if you like to talk about it, I can go into detail.
I was just going to say, tell us more about this. Okay. How were you able to translate that into your business?
I would love to talk about that. So as I mentioned earlier, we are in the business of building web technologies and smartphone technologies. Our teams, not all of them are located under the same roof. Some of them are remotely located. When the teams are remotely located, it's a rich environment for the silos to evolve. So we noticed those silos. One specific example is that we noticed an issue, is sort of a communication gap between our designers and developers. Designers were saying we are designing right, developers aren't doing the job. Developers were saying we are developing right, designers aren't doing aren't pulling their weight. So after reading the book and after learning this model, we focused our energies on single most important goal, and I'm going to refer back to the definition of thematic goal, the first principle of Patric's model. Thematic goal is single most important short-term goal. So our single most important short-term goal was improve communication between our design and development teams. And then the second, defining objectives. Defining objective, as I mentioned earlier, are qualitative. It's qualitative thing. So saying that improve communication between design and development that's what defining objective is. And also defining objectives were something like producing software which have equal input from design and development side of the house. And our clients like the software from design and development perspective. So no one is pointing fingers towards each other. So that was defining objective. And then at the same time, now the third principle, if you remember, standard operating objectives. Even when we are focused on this short-term goal of improving communication between design and development, we still have our day job, which is producing software for our clients, producing web technologies and smartphone technologies. So show had to go on. So while we are focused on short-term goal, we made sure that we are doing on daily basis what we are supposed to do. And then the fourth principle of Patric's model is metrics, measuring your success towards thematic goals, measuring your success towards standard operating objectives through key performance indicators. And I am very happy and proud to report that we observed significant improvement in the communication between the two sides of the house.
Excellent. Have you had any other books that you've read, either with the book club or outside of the book club, where you could say, you know what, I was able to implement it just like this one here in my organization, and it's helped me?
I can't think of one book. However, there was a book. It was actually the book is called The Daily Drucker. It's a combination of or collection of summaries of the writings of Peter Drucker, the father of modern management. And while reading that book, there were several chapters in that book. The book is divided into very short article type, summary type formations. There are 1 or 2 page summaries of Peter Drucker's writings. And there were several of those which I read, and I decided that I need to implement them right away. One example was strategic partnerships with businesses that offer services which are similar to ours, but not exactly. So they're not our direct competitors, but they target the similar markets. And after reading Peter Drucker's article on that subject, I went out and I decided to make partnerships with those businesses to reduce our marketing and sales cost and improve bottom line through that route.
All right. So it seems to me that both the Drucker book and also here Patric Lencioni have both been able to help you improve your company.
Oh, most certainly, and that's what I consider the success of a book. When you read a book, and when you finish a book, you leave with something that makes a change in your behavior, that makes a change in the way you operate. And that's what Patric Lencioni's book did. I read it, and as soon as I finished it, I was ready to implement it. It made changes in my behavior.
All right. I have 2 more questions here for you about the book, and I think they're both extremely rhetorical based on what you have already said, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Sure.
So how well do you think Patric Lencioni achieved with this book the goal of making people understand how these silos work and how to break them down?
In short, very effectively. It's very, I think it's a successful book, considering the fact that it's been on New York Times bestseller list and several other bestseller lists. And the book is, these are advanced concepts written in very straightforward manner, effective delivery. So because of that, I found it a success story. And then I mentioned how it made changes in my behavior, which is my single most important criteria to determine the success of a book. One point I would like to make is that if you want to read the book and you don't have time to read 224 pages, you could just refer towards the end of the book, about a dozen pages. That's where really the meat of the book is. The story in the book about a young consultant, Jude Cousins, is very interesting. It helps understand the whole model. However, the last dozen pages is where you can find gold without having to read all 200 pages.
All right. And then the second and final rhetorical question, would you recommend this book to others?
Yes, certainly. And I actually have already been recommending this book to others. I've been presenting this book as a gift to my colleagues and clients, and highly recommend it. Yes.
All right. Perfect. Well, Sani, thank you very much also for stopping by here today on the Project Management Podcast and talking to us about Silos, Politics and Turf Wars, a book written by Patric Lencioni. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Enjoyed being here.
And those were the book reviews with Mark Layton and Sani Abdul-Jabbar from the PMI LA Book Club. Let me remind you that we now need your vote. Do you want more book reviews like this? Or do you want us to stop? Please go to pm-podcast.com before December 31st, 2010 and click on the survey link that you see in episode 163 and tell us. Every answer counts. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. If you are a project manager who wants to become a PMP, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcast, the PM Prepcast, and study for the exam by watching over 38 hours of video training from pmprepcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com, and when you write, please don't forget to put that dash in there, and please tell me from where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. How many certified project management professionals does it take to change a light bulb? It takes 2. It takes one PMP to change the light bulb, and it takes another PMP to ask whether or not they can now earn PDUs for this activity. Until next time.